I know that the world is watching as the government shutdown continues to take hold. There are certain things that, as you know, the one from 18 to 19, 2018, 2019, December to January, eventually started being impacted. Uh, Aviation started to be impacted by the decisions of air traffic controllers. Um, there are some things that can be directed through management and good leadership. There are other things like sick leave usage that cannot be governed by management. In this particular case, as you know, the Federal Aviation Administration's highest priority is safety, ensuring safety. There's zero tolerance for any safety incidents. And my heart goes out to those affected by the UPS disaster of this week. They are going to ensure safety. And so, as numbers of sick leave and other um, factors of, cut off training because government shut down, et cetera, to ensure safety, they're going to take a proactive stance of limiting or reducing strategically the number of flights.
How could you see that impacting larger airlines and smaller airlines alike?
Fortunately, the way the FAA works with these matters is that they'll collaborate on that. They'll make a decision that it looks as if 10% reduction is the right reduction. Um, and then they will work with the airlines to say, okay, if that is indeed the case, and here are our most impacted facilities, you help us decide which flights are the right ones to reduce or to delay.
Air traffic control is something that you obviously know from a personal level of doing that, I imagine early on in your career, and then overseeing a lot of those operations during a time with the FAA. The job in and of itself, how would you describe that and how that role really makes the world travel? I mean, it's done through the local level with people that are ultimately not able to collect a paycheck to do their job right now.
That's correct. And so, as you've heard, and as others imply, the role of an air traffic controller starts in a stressful way, meaning that you have a lot of responsibilities. You have to be extremely mature and well trained and on top of your mental game at all times. There are some lulls in the activity, but you can never, as an air traffic controller, be lax during those periods because they can change in an instant. And so, as an air traffic controller, you want your life to be intact. Even some of the sleep structure or time between shifts has been analyzed, and science has given direction and assistance to the FAA to make sure that as you take your position as an air traffic controller, you have the least distractions and the most rest, and you will be at your top performing capability. And so the introduction of some of the stresses, the external stresses to that, meaning financial concerns, whether or not your family is taken care of, what will happen tomorrow, distracts from the ability to sit down as well rested and as prepared for that shift as you can be.
If I remember correct, you were heavily involved in a large event on 9/11 that involved grounding aircraft after one of our nation's most tragic scenarios. Having said that and prefacing it, how significant is what has been rolled out by the FAA in the grand scheme of aviation? How big is what we are seeing right now um, in terms of a historical scale of how this will impact the industry and customers?
Well, it's certainly unprecedented. Even when the slowdown in air traffic occurred back in 1819, it was not determined by decision. It happened by location and by the circumstances of the day. This proactive approach I think mirrors a little bit of what we did in 9/11, where when confronted with the circumstances, a decision was made that ensured the safety of the remaining flying public. And I believe that's what you're seeing FAA officials right now and leadership do, is they're saying, hey, wait a minute, rather than attack this from a tactical perspective, minute by minute, location by location. Let's take the data that we have, which now there's a lot more data available a lot earlier than back in 2001. Let's take that data, let's analyze it, and let's make a good safety decision that allows for the system not to wind to a halt in one location or another, but allows us to take control of what needs to happen in order for the safety of the flight.
Obviously, there's factors at play that will impact the answer to this question, but how do you foresee this playing out short term and long term, getting things back up and running to full capacity?
Yeah, and thank you for that. There certainly is a lapse in some training, as I mentioned, for those who are not certified on a particular position or otherwise. They are doing without that training, so that will have to be reinitiated, and any catch up will have to take place, which will certainly. It's my experience in government, having been vice president of the air traffic organization for a long period of time, that the lag in restoring to full performance is greater than the amount of time that was the shutdown was. It's I don't have the data in front of me, but it's exponentially larger to restart programs that have been shut down, to re-engage vendors who are helping to modernize the system. That all takes time. It takes an analysis, and there will be a period necessary. But as far as air traffic controllers returning, my guess is it will take a paycheck or two for the distractions associated with the shutdown to be fully resolved. It will also, as there was a law put in place that says back pay is mandatory. It will take a little while to capture that back pay and to establish. So even if the shutdown ends, that doesn't mean that they're made financially whole immediately. That means that from then they can expect that next paycheck to come, but then the hard work of determining how quickly they can receive their back pay. So that status of stress, that status of distraction may remain for a period of time.
One more for you, and then we'll just see if we missed anything from your perspective. But if we were to focus purely on Salt Lake City International Airport, which is your medium-sized airport that has a Delta hub here that sees primarily Delta flights in and out, when you look at the numbers and the amount of people that travel in and out of that airport using one specific airline due to the options that they have, what will this do to Salt Lake City specifically as one of 40 on that list, that proposed list?
And yes, and I recognize that, first of all, that denotes how important Salt Lake City has become in our U.S. aviation infrastructure. It is a very important hub. Again, I'll go back to what I said, I think, at the beginning, which is Delta will now have to sit down and say, okay, we've got 5 flights to New York, and they're going at an 80% rate. Which one should we remove from service? Or do we keep all 5 of the New Yorks and remove the Dallas that only goes out at half the status, half full every day? And so they will sit down and they will have the ability to analyze the data, and they will make, in some cases, hard decisions. I think that they will be, and it's been their history, especially with Delta Airlines, I believe they'll be sensitive to those harder to get to locations as it relates to these things. Like I said, if there's 5 flights to New York, that would be, I think, where they would look first, because there are many alternative opportunities than the 1 flight a day to Pocatello. Or something like that. I know there's more than that, but that is just as by way of example. So I think there's a reality. I certainly can't talk to the TSA aspect of this, and that has been a large part of this as well, where passengers have not been able to get to their flight, which ultimately may have been delayed for a half an hour, but still took off. And then that backup that occurs as a result of the combination of TSA and air traffic delays. That's a piece of this that they just need to be, as everybody is suggesting, they need to be patient with, number one, and exercise good judgment in terms of when they get to the airport. Also, be communicative, meaning have the app and look at it. The airlines these days, through automation and software, are able to give you information a lot faster than used to be the case. And as soon as that information is received, act on it. Don't assume that something will change from what you just heard without your direct input and participation in helping to make that change. But to be patient. The next thing that I would also just bring up, and it's probably not a topic for today because this is tactical in real time, but this will also bring up the subject once again of air traffic control being a government entity or privatization. And it's important to note that for a large organization like the U.S. air traffic, with the record of safety that we have, it's been tried 3 times previously, not full-on privatization, but the dialogues related to privatizing the air traffic organization. They've come up at least 3 times in the past and have failed. And as we've watched other countries privatize, it would be important for us to just watch how those organizations are subject to the economy. And I'm not sure that as large as the US is, it should be subject to that level of economy. But that's a much larger dialogue. I just wanted to touch on it from the perspective of every time this happens, and every time it's the air traffic or aviation and the economy that is from aviation, a shutdown happens, it seems that it's pressures from aviation and aviation related employees, government employees, that cause a difference, that cause a change, that cause agreements to be had where otherwise they wouldn't. That would go away under privatization, but in both directions it would go away. The shutdown might extend much, much longer without the pressures from the economic aviation, but also it would not necessarily take us in the direction that is safest for the country.